Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. First things first, congratulations to our giveaway winner for this week, Lady Dragon Poet. If you're interested in entering the giveaway this week, stay tuned until later in the video and I'll tell you exactly how to. That said, we've got some malicious compliance stories, so let's jump right into our first story of the day by Lucanos. Do not make any contact with anyone from work. Once upon a time, I was working with a major Australian telecommunications company. I worked in a call center with a group of underemployed lateral thinkers. It made work great as you were always discovering new things, but it made us a bit of a challenge to manage as the department tried to hobble us to fit into cookie-cutter molds they expected of the call center operators. We had a manager who was, if I was to be generous, useless. He once went on leave for 2 weeks without a replacement being arranged. I put a balloon with a face drawn on it at his desk as our interim team leader. Team productivity under Mr. Balloon was measurably better than when the team leader was there, and I proved it with reports and all. Suffice to say, our manager did not command respect. Fast forward a few months and one of my colleagues figured out how to spoof emails. Our manager had a certificate he proudly presented on his desk saying he had graduated something college. Having completed a course in frontline management, he was extremely proud of this, and so the target vector was clear. My colleague went to an internet cafe, back then they were a thing, and sent a spoofed email to our manager. The email was built to look like it was from something college. The email demanded that manager provide evidence of his competence as a frontline manager or his certificate would be withdrawn. Now, manager's world was appropriately shaken when he got this email. He must have complained to the appropriate higher-ups because the InfoSec squad jumped straight onto it. They traced the email back to the cafe's IP address. Okay, in retrospect, we could all see this error in judgment. They printed out mugshots from the company's internal directory and identified my colleague as being the person who sent the email. Colleague was pulled into a day's worth of meetings as manager, manager's manager, etc. All went on him pretty hard trying to get him to confess so they could dismiss him for misconduct. I think the company realized they were on shaky ground to try and prove that colleague had really done anything wrong. Oh, the days before bullying was codified. Having sweated colleague all day with no effect, manager's manager put him on paid leave pending investigation with strict instructions, do not make any contact with anyone from work, as they didn't want rumors of a plebe messing with the ruling class get out. Months pass. Colleague has not been in the office. The company has completed their investigation but needs to let colleague present his defense. But his mobile is disconnected, and he has connected a new number with a competitor, and he has moved home, and he is not replying to emails. He has ghosted, and the company doesn't know what to do. More months pass. I guess it gets to a point where the company can declare colleague legally dead, or at least say he has abandoned employment. They stop paying his wages. A few more months pass. Manager's manager is walking through a business district in the city and runs into colleague. Colleague is in a flash suit with a briefcase, obviously hustling to a meeting himself. Manager's manager says hello, asks colleague what he's been doing with himself. I work for a major tech company now. I've been working with them since a couple of weeks after he was put on paid leave. I would have told you, but I was told not to communicate with anyone from work. Thanks for that second paycheck though. One of the best instances of malicious compliance I have witnessed, and probably the most profitable. So if this was you, would you have gone ahead with this plot and tried to silently distance yourself and see how long the checks would keep coming in? Or would you be a little too scared about, I don't know, maybe legal ramifications, whatnot, I'm not sure, and wouldn't go through with it? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by Jipperish, making my landlord pay over 100 grand for fixing a sink. So I'm a college student and I rent a room from a landlord and live in a house with multiple other students. The contract for my room clearly says that I have to fix all the damages to my room that I have caused at my own cost and that all the bigger issues in the house will be covered by the landlord. Well, one day I noticed that my sink is kind of clogged and it's making a weird noise. He says it's probably my own fault and that I should get a plunger to fix the problem. A little background info about the house that I live in: all the sinks at the top level of the house connect to the same pipe and everyone heard the same noise. So the chance of it being my fault would be almost zero. But since I had to fix the problem on my own, I tried my best. However, you might have guessed it, but I'm not really good at this since it's not my job. I even have my dad check it since he knows more about this stuff than I do, and he says the pipe is clogged somewhere, but doesn't know exactly how far down the pipe. So I tried my best to fix the problem myself, but since it's clearly a bigger issue that is not my fault, I contact my landlord once again. He still refuses to come and fix the clogged sink, even after me clearly stating that everyone is hearing this noise in this house, and tells me to solve my own problems like an adult would. Well, since I'm legally not an adult yet and having tried my best, me and the other residents in the house have decided to give up trying to fix the issue and just let it be. A month later, one person in the house had water coming out of her sink because it completely clogged, and within days, everyone was having the same issue. Because now everyone was complaining to the landlord, he had to fix the problem since it was a bigger problem within the house that everyone was experiencing. Not only did he have to fix the clogged pipe of all the sinks, but he also had to fix the water damage that we all had in our rooms because the water would just come out of the sink. When he finally decided to hire someone to fix the problem, the costs were already up to 100 grand and will probably be even more since some of the other people living within the house have sued the landlord for not agreeing to the contract and for neglect of his basic duties as landlord. He even called us and screamed at us why we didn't mention the problem earlier, to which I replied that I tried to solve the problem as an adult by informing my landlord who was supposed to fix it, but that this clearly didn't help. It would just suck to have a landlord that just doesn't care about the property you're living in. That's a pretty bad sign. I would think one of the last things you want to mess with and let sit around is problems with pipes in the house and plumbing. So despite the fact that they had to pay 100 grand and it did bubble up into something huge, it was a pretty big red flag that they were ignoring the sink issue. Our next story is by Excelicious. Bank selectively enforces rules, loses business and money. In the 1970s, with the UK suffering a recession and work hard to come by, my then childless dad had an opportunity to move to Dubai for work. My mom was able to go with him, they'd have accommodation provided, a good income, higher than the UK equivalent would have been, and were able to fly over and check everything out before committing. All in all, a great opportunity. They took the plunge and decided as they had no accommodation costs in Dubai, they would keep paying the mortgage on their UK house, so it would be available to them if/when they returned. My parents had a UK current account with one bank. Let's call them Goodish, but their mortgage and saving account was with a different bank. Let's call them Muppets. Every month, Dad's salary was paid into his current account with Goodish, and he then phoned them to ask to move the money into his saving account with Muppets, as this is the account his mortgage payment came from. He never had any problems. One day, Mom writes a check from the Goodish account, then later realizes the account will not have sufficient funds to cover it. No problem, thought Dad. I'll give Muppets a call and ask them to move some back out of the savings. Unfortunately, Muppets didn't want to transfer money out of their account, and so informed Dad that the only way he can remove money from that account is in branch, in person, using his savings book. Now, Muppets didn't have a Dubai branch in the 70s. The only way he could comply would be to travel 3,500 miles home. Frustrated at the repeated refusal to help, Dad resolves the immediate check issue another way and looks at when he'll be next in the UK. Fast forward a couple of months and Dad is back in the UK. Armed with his little savings book, he strolls into his local branch of Muppets and asks for confirmation of his savings balance and mortgage balance. He then hands over the mandatory savings book and requests to withdraw the full savings account balance in cash. Dad then pays off the outstanding mortgage in full and asks for an envelope for the excess. Dad then closes the savings account, walks to Goodish, and deposits the remaining savings. Bank manager tried to stop this happening, but once Dad pointed out that he technically isn't able to transfer money into his savings account without using the savings book, he'd have no way to pay the mortgage. The mortgage itself had no restriction on early repayment, and thus he could do what he liked with his own money. The bank definitely lost out on this because they're going to have interest on that mortgage. So having that mortgage get paid out in full right in that moment, they ended up losing a good amount of money because they should have been getting that little bit of interest every so many often times in that time frame. The next story is by Venarius, How I Got the Final Laugh at a Slum-Lord. Years ago, college days, I had a slumlord. For example, he was an unapologetic butt. Barged into girls' apartments to show new potential tenants unannounced, even when the girl was unclothed in bed and wouldn't leave. In our state, they are required to give 24 hours notice before entering. In my apartment, I complained about a leaky sink in February, 40 gallons a day when I measured it, and it took him until November when I found a sink, new in box, at my back door. I called him about it and he said he thought I'd get the hint and install a new sink myself. The firebox to control the alarms was outside my door and it was faulty and would go off 3 times a day and night, and I would have to dash to the box to reset the alarm. Kept calling him about it and he didn't care. Keep resetting it, he'd say. Cue malicious compliance. I started calling the fire department every time it went off instead of resetting it. The fire department would have to come down to investigate, reset the alarm, and leave. After the 3rd call/event, they started fining him. I think it was like $1,000 for each event. The fire alarm was fixed within a day after that. When I moved out, I mailed the key back to him too late. He received the key on the 4th, when technically he should have had it on the 1st. Mind you, I was vacated and moved out by the 1st, but the mailed key didn't arrive to him by then. I had even cleaned the entire apartment spotless, better than what it was when I moved in, to ensure he wasn't going to give some BS reason to keep my deposit. So he took me to court for $3 grand, 3 months worth of rent, because he didn't get his key back by the 1st. I told the judge the story, but he said other things didn't matter. Technically, I should have gotten the key to him by the 1st. He asked the landlord, "When did you rent the apartment?" And he replied within 2 to 3 weeks it was rented. So the judge ruled that 3 months' rent was ludicrous and the apartment was rented within a month. But since they technically said he didn't have the key on the 1st, I would owe him 1 month's rent. Cue malicious compliance. Your Honor, I am but a lowly college student with very little income. Can I make payments in the amount of $50 a month until the debt is repaid? And like that, it took this guy 20 months to get his darn $1,000. And I wrote 1 letter in each check's memo, "Freak you," repeatedly. Well, it definitely sucks that because the key was 3 days late, you have to pay $1,000. That said, stretching it out over all that time, making them wait nearly 2 years to get that $1,000, that's a good little blow to the gut on them trying to get back at you. So quickly now, I just want to give you info on the giveaway. So if you want to be in with a chance to win $30 in Amazon gift cards, all you have to do is leave a comment pertaining to something you saw in the video on any video we upload this week, and I will pick a winner from a random video on Sunday night after the last video has gone out and announce it on next Monday's video. So feel free to comment on every video from the week to better your chances of winning. Again, I do want to stress that the comment has to be related to the video, so you can't just leave a random comment and expect to win. And whilst you're at it, why not like the video, because it helps more than you know. That said, our final story of the day is by Eric Davis 1240214. You're counting minutes? I can count seconds. I recently had fun reminiscing in this post on I Don't Work Here Lady about the ridiculous nonsense I dealt with while working as a grunt at a lower-level corporate law firm in the early 2000s. That story reminded me of this one that fits well in this sub. The backstory takes a little while, but basically the partner I worked for had let a project slide and was behind the 8 ball with a big client deadline coming up. I had a free weekend, so I offered to work late a couple of nights and through the weekend to get it all caught up and ready. I wanted the overtime, I had a trip coming up, and he was thrilled to be bailed out. I took over a conference room and spent a few hours Friday night, plus most of Saturday and Sunday getting all the files in order and correctly documented. I probably put in a total of 18 to 20 hours, which would have put me at around 55 hours for the week instead of my normal 35. I was stoked because the first 10 extra hours were straight pay, $20 an hour. But the next 10 were 1.5 times, $30 an hour. I was pretty beat on Monday, but I'd scored $500 in overtime pay, before taxes, and was feeling pretty rich. Monday morning, I showed the attorney and he couldn't stop thanking me. Monday afternoon though, I got called down to the HR office. Yes, the same HR lady from before, where I was informed that they were very upset that I'd worked over 45 hours because the firm did not like paying 1.5 times overtime. I was perplexed because I knew they were billing the client $95 an hour for my time, so the extra 20 hours that netted me $500 was billed to the client for $1,900. They were clearing $1,400 on the deal and they hadn't missed the deadline. I tried explaining that, but she was adamant that it was a real problem and that it could not happen again. I don't know if she saw me roll my eyes, but I promised it wouldn't. I went back to my cubicle and figured it was over. Nope, not so fast. A couple of days later, HR lady called me to her office with good news. I was getting a promotion and a raise. The promotion was to the exact same job I already had. Literally no difference at all but a title. The raise was $500 a year. And the catch was that I was now salaried instead of hourly, which meant no more overtime ever. Yeah, I know better now. Super illegal and super unethical. Here's the malicious compliance. Okay, so you don't want me to work overtime. Fine. From that day forward, I wrote down the exact minute I got to my desk. 8:57? That's what I wrote, not 9 o'clock. Back from lunch 2 minutes early? Write it down. Phone call kept me at my desk until 5:06? It's all in the desk calendar. And at the end of the week on Friday afternoon, I'd take time to tally it all up. Company time. And if I showed that I'd worked an extra 17 minutes that week, you bet I carried my butt out there at 4:43. It was petty as freak, but for the remaining year or so I worked there, I put in exactly 35 hours a week. Not 34 hours and 58 minutes, not 35 hours and 3 minutes, 35 hours on the dot. I had never been that way before. I probably averaged 15 to 30 minutes of extra time a day that I didn't claim as overtime. I was just doing the job. But when they showed how closely they were watching my time and then took advantage of me to screw me out of even the opportunity for the overtime I was legally entitled to, well, let's just say I could count minutes better than they could, no matter how much of their time I had to spend to do it. Hindsight is 20/20, but looking back on this, you really wish you did have a better idea of the legality of these moves that they did. You wish you could protect yourself better and get yourself in that situation where you're not getting screwed over. That said, OP I feel is totally justified in what they did. If you're going to kill their chance of getting any kind of overtime, don't expect them to work overtime. OP didn't get too into the specifics on how they treated them in regards to them working specifically 35 hours, but I'm sure it was a little less than desirable for the management and hiring in HR. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today, so if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe and turn notifications on if you haven't. All of those things help the channel out so incredibly much. So no matter what you did, whether it was commenting, liking, subscribing, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. That said, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all next time right here.